Welcome to the Excellence at Work podcast, where we explore the strategies and best practices that drive business success. I'm Rochelle Cook, COO of Brandon Hall Group and the host of our podcast, along with members of our executive team. In each episode, we'll dive into the latest trends, insights, and real-world examples from some of the most exciting leaders from organizations worldwide. Be part of our journey and learn from the best as we discuss innovative approaches and cutting-edge technologies for talent management, learning and development, leadership, diversity and inclusion, and more.
Hi, everyone. This is Michael Rochelle, Chief Strategy Officer at the Brandon Hall Group. Welcome to another Excellence at Work podcast. And I'm really excited because today we're going to be exploring how AI is transforming workplace learning and training, and specifically how our guest, NTT Data, has leveraged the AI-powered learning platform from CYPHER Learning. And what's really cool about this is they were able to use this to drive compliance, engagement, and efficiency in their learning program. I think it's going to be a very insightful conversation. And Daniel Frye, who's the Senior Manager of Training Design at NTT Data, is joining me, as well as Caitlin Bigsby is the Director of Solution Marketing at CYPHER Learning. So I just wanted to say hi to you both, and happy Thursday, and I hope you're all doing well. Where are you both calling in from?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
I'm in Vancouver, Canada.
Canadians.
There we go, two Canadians. I'm not too far from you. Yeah, I'm based in Boston. Toronto's one of my favorite. Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Yes.
New England Patriots?
I am a diehard everything
All
Boston fan. This is where I'm from, and it's painful to acknowledge that right now. Already Boston team at this point.
I know. I commiserate with you. I know. But this year, it's going to be different. There's a little bit of hope.
You just got to promise me that you get rid of those Panthers. That's all I'm asking you to do. Like, don't blow the 2-game lead, okay? All right. So, Daniel, let's start with you, because this is a very exciting topic. Can you give us kind of an overview, company's mission, and how learning plays a role in achieving your company's strategic goals?
Yeah, so we're part of NTT Data Global, and we're basically a business process outsourcer. So organizations come to us for our expertise in call center solutions, standing up call centers, and being able to deliver value and customer experience. So for us, training is what we do. It's our bread and butter. And we really do have a passion for learning. We think it's central to our mission. And our employees, it's call center, so it's fast moving, it's technology driven, and keeping them up to date with the latest skills is really critical for what we do. And this includes things like compliance and our best practices as part of our success or recipe for success. So for us, it's more than just making sure employees are doing the right thing, but it's making sure to deliver high value and solutions to our customers and clients.
And Caitlin, maybe you can jump in here. So what makes CYPHER Learning's AI-powered platform the right solution for challenges like these?
So CYPHER has got AI infused throughout, and one of the ways that comes to fruition that's super useful is through an AI agent, a course creator agent, that really streamlines the creation of courses from start to finish. And it can build on existing documentation and existing processes. So, of course, somebody who is an expert in the subject matter and how to do something, they probably written it down, documented it, pull that all into the CYPHER agent, and it's going to create the course start to finish, including authoring assessments and setting up gamification and the entire structure. So it sort of takes a lot of that busy work out of it and really facilitates that. We also have a CYPHER agent for learners, which is another topic, but the course creator agent is a fantastic time saver.
Dana, just back to you on a follow-up with this. Many organizations that we talk to, one of the key differentiators for them is when you add the word at scale at the end of learning. It sounds like you've kind of figured that out with your partner at CYPHER, is how to tackle those two small words, but they're a huge impact on a learning organization.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better. Scalability. So we do a lot of training. We have new hire classes. I wouldn't be surprised if I told you we're in the hundreds of new learners. So scaling training, improving training, and making sure that we're achieving our client goals in terms of not only performance, but in terms of delivery of customer experience is critical. So having a tool that supports that and being able to leverage that is really important to our success. Absolutely.
So I'm kind of tackling that just to kind of as a follow-up to that. CYPHER's got a pretty interesting, innovative, creative platform. I think it's really kind of taking the industry by storm and kind of reimagining how we do this. But our audience is always interested in, a platform always has specific attributes to a specific client. And so what specific AI-powered features from CYPHER Learning have had the greatest impact on your training program?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest game changers for us has been around the automated learning paths and then the piece around compliance tracking and gamification. So for us, learning paths ensure that the employees are taking training in the correct order. And this also reduces errors when it comes to even compliance. So for us, we have regulators that audit, do agents have like privacy and security? Are we following AML and things like that? So making sure that those lessons and those training are completed before they hit the floor, so to speak, and take calls with actual clients is critical. And so before implementing LMS, we had challenges because we just couldn't track it. It was a very manual thing. Trainers would miss it, learners would miss it. So being able to have LMS automate and track that for us and then cut down on reporting has been a huge win. And then from terms of automated learning paths, before, again, scheduling training, making sure that agents, learners were in the correct courses was a manual process. We were relying on our trainers to basically do all the legwork. So being able to use an LMS, being able to create curriculum and learning paths has been a game changer for us.
And I think I remember in prepping for this, you had some pretty impressive improved engagement in learner participation scores. I think you went from like 60% to, was it 96%?
Yeah, that's
that
correct.
change.
That's
I'll
correct.
tell you what, if people remember nothing else from this podcast, you're gonna get blown up in LinkedIn trying to understand better how you did that, because we all know that if the learning engagement isn't there, the learning just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's actually, I'm glad you asked that question because the tie back is really with the tool and being able to use the gamification that's built in. So as learners, can compete with one another and kind of earn badges and points, they really get excited, right? So learning actually becomes something that they want to do and they're motivated to do because they get those little badges and that recognition. So it's been a great positive reinforcement, and that's really what has kind of led to the increased participation and engagement.
Yeah, kind of coming back to you, Caitlin, on this, good segue is, we're talking about AI and learning. We're talking about how it's evolving rapidly. Rapid evolvement, revolutionary, fast uptake, really interesting results, good outcomes. But everyone is wondering about the side of governance, keeping this thing on the rails, not having it have a mind of its own, not having it create unintended consequences, trample on someone's trademark or copyright infringement. We all know that that is a gating factor in the back of the minds of the buyers. How is CYPHER ensuring that ethical AI practices like transparency, bias mitigation, security, data privacy, all that, how is that all taking place?
So I'll talk about one of the revolutionary way, pardon me, that we've approached our agent creator tool, I said both for learners and for course creators, is we have something called AI cross-check. So rather than having a single AI service generate the course and be like, hey, we're done, we're all correct, we actually have a second independent AI service that analyzes the content before it's even presented to the person who's requested it to double check, look for hallucinations, look for contradictions, and then surface those discrepancies to the requester so that they can decide, at least are aware of them and decide how to proceed with them. So that's one major distinguishing feature that we have, which I think is really critical. I saw a statistic yesterday from a KPMG study that said 56% of people who've been using AI at work have admitted to making a mistake based on bad information from an AI. So having that double check is really, really important. So we also have guardrails in place that the administrators can put in to sort of say, these topics are acceptable, these topics are not. So that's one way of ensuring it's being responsibly used at work. And then the services we use themselves are committed to not using proprietary information and are only using publicly available information out there, or your own information that you have uploaded, which also remains proprietary to you. So for example, if NTT uploads their policy and procedures manual to build a course, that's still theirs. It is not getting sent back to, I call it the hive mind of the Gen AI model to fold in. It's still theirs, as is any resulting course, that material that is being created. So those are some of the guardrails we've put in place to ensure that it's being used ethically, responsibly, and with accuracy and trust.
And what I also like too from the briefings and discussions we've had is you're doing things like second independent AI for accuracy. It's you're trying to create an industry standard that isn't there yet. There's no ISO on AI. And I love the fact too that it takes a lot to like comply, say, with GDPR and being able to go through all those privacy and security regulations. I would say to our audience, and I'm sure they would agree, that getting this right is the gaining factor for using AI and learning. Like, you got to know that this is in place, that everything is going to go smoothly before you really bring it all into the building. So we need more providers to have the level of explainability and transparency that you have. One quick question is, how many, like in terms, I want you to weigh in at the same time, just kind of a quick thing that came to mind is, if you had 10 organizations thinking about AI and learning, do you think the majority of those organizations, when I say majority, like 7 or more, would make sure that this transparency and explainability is a top requirement?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, to Caitlin's point, we have a lot of proprietary client material, right? So we can't have that stuff going out into the Ethernet and the World Wide Web and all that. So making sure that we had a provider that could ensure that the content was locked down, that the material was safe, and that it was only useful for our audience was critical in us choosing them. So we're completely impressed and overwhelmed with joy about the fact that they have such solutions and they really safeguard our content, right? It's one of the reasons why we trust them with our business. So it's been great. And I say that, yeah, if you're looking for someone who does it well and who's at the forefront of all the practices that we're trying to achieve when it comes to AI, these guys are them. They do it right. So we're certainly impressed with that.
Well, a tip to have to you, Caitlin, what more would you want to add there?
Yeah, I think that is a primary concern at most organizations, and it is a reluctance of IT departments to allow it in place, and which actually kind of puts them in a bind, because then you end up with people, off the side of their desks working with ChatGPT on a different site. So I think being able to provide a sanctioned solution that is trusted, and like even ChatGPT Premium will still take your data and share it. It's not a sure thing. So yeah, providing people with a sanctioned solution that is protecting it is really important. And I think something that IT departments and HR departments are looking for.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. But let's talk a little bit, let's drill in on the 60 to 96% kind of in a different approach. We know a lot, Daniel, that, people are talking about personalized learning as it. And personalized learning is more than just saying, what's in it for me, or learning just the way I want, when I want to. But it's much more complicated than that now. You have language, you have dialect, you want to be inclusive with your learning practices. There's a lot riding on getting it right. And then you add to at scale. And many organizations like, holy cow, I've got 10,000 employees who have to have like 10,000 highly personalized learning experiences. And you kind of have to say yes in a way that's true. Maybe you can talk about how this relationship has improved accessibility and inclusivity and learning in your organization.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why we selected CYPHER was the fact that the technology and just their investment in road mapping upcoming technology was impressive. It completely blew out all the other competitors. And when we talk about things like, supporting, multiple languages, 50 in this case, we have multiple sites, right? Whether that's India, whether that's going to be South Africa. So having content that is be able to be translated into native language and for different regions is critical. And then in terms of just tailoring learning experiences, so making sure that the content can be what agents need for future skills development, right? So it's not generic, but it's almost, can be just-in-time learning, right? So this is really what our agents are looking for, tools and knowledge that can help them be successful on the job when they need it. So I think that's a real important piece of recipe for success for us, having a supplier that helps us not only adopt technology, but can really turn it around and make it something that really works for us and works for our learning organization.
Yeah, just even things as basic as language, right? Having 50 plus languages accessible and dialects and all that, like that means all the world to trying to create a personalized, meaningful and learning affinity, people learning within their native language. But let's get to the nitty gritty. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. So what was the experience like in implementing CYPHER Learning? And if you can share candidly, were there any hurdles organizationally when you went through all this?
Well, I'm sure your audience will know big global organizations, multiple systems, disparate systems, and then change, right? Like no one likes change, right? But I think for us, of course, there was an adjustment period. But I think one of the great things, again, in leveraging CYPHER was the tool is very intuitive and, the implementation process and the support helped make it seamless. We already knew as we were going on this journey that we needed to have our own internal specialization and capability. So we kind of put that in place. But the journey with CYPHER and CYPHER team has been incredible. They've been a great partner. They've answered questions. They provided additional training. And it's just been a great transformation for us. And so I think the challenge before implementing was around, tracking, reporting, and compliance. It was very manual. And then even like we talked about earlier with our courses and being able to track learner completions and all that stuff was very, very manual. But with CYPHER and the platform, there's a lot of automation. And so it's been a huge win. Our learners are happy. Our training staff is happy. Our administrators are happy. Everybody's happy. So it's been a great journey, and we look forward to continuing that partnership.
That's exciting. I mean, to get rid of, and we try our best as human beings, but kind of bringing in a platform that gets rid of those errors, those mishaps, those hiccups that we're all prone to have, iron that out, makes all the difference in the world for a learner. I think where the audience will let them go, they're probably on the edge of their seat saying, okay, this is great. Sounds really exciting. I'm in. What happened when you did this? What were the improvements? What's the before and after? The measurable improvements, the measurable benefits. I know it's been significant for you, but maybe you can kind of line out some of the highlights of what you've seen as measurable improvements.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So really, there were a couple of key areas. So compliance tracking was one, then the learner engagement that we spoke about, and then pieces just around the recognition through the gamification. So for us, for example, for compliance, we were able to achieve, 4 months where we hit our 100% compliance with our audits, right? So that keeps our regulators happy and, of course, our senior leadership happy. In terms of manual efforts, so tying into the extra work that's always done around manual reporting and things like that, we're able to save like 24 working days. So for an organization like us that does a lot of training, that's a huge number, right? And that's a huge win. And then when we talk about assessment scores, we know that, it's not only important to do the training, but to make sure that there's retention and knowledge. So we saw a good lift in our assessment scores where the average used to be around 85% in terms of learner retention, and that jumped up to about 93%. So that was a significant improvement, showing stronger knowledge retention. Engagement, again, you mentioned that earlier. So we went up to about 96% from 60. So again, I think that was contributed to having those learning paths and as well making sure that the content is contained and learners can actually track their progress, just the ease of use of that. And then the final piece that I'd like to add is really just around the gamification. So before, we really had no way of motivating learners other than just do it if you don't complete the training. Whereas now they can actually track their progress and see the badges that they're earning. So, we had about 1,400 learners kind of go through the system as we piloted and kind of adopted it. And that resulted in about 3,897 badges. So we're turning training from just training into achievement-driven success and experience. So it's been fantastic.
I'm ready. I'm sold. I'm ready to go work. I'm onboarded. Let's go. I want to work at NTT Data. So that's exciting. And, some of these percentages that we oftentimes rattle off may not be huge jumps, but just for the audience, go from 85% to 93%, on improved assessment scores. It sounds small, but just think of if you have hundreds, if not thousands of employees that collectively know 10% more than what they used to know. Think about that for a second in terms of knowledge retention. And imagine in a football analogy, since we were talking about the Patriots, that's the difference between getting to the red zone and getting in the end zone. That's only 20 more yards. So it can be a huge benefit by just incrementally improving retention across a large group of people, department, function, employee base. So all the numbers are super impressive at that level of scale.
Yeah, and I think also when you talk about the kind of compliance training that they are doing and the fines that go with mistakes,
Yeah.
I mean, if you get fined per email for a privacy violation, all it takes is one employee who missed the lesson to cost you thousands of dollars. So yeah, that's a huge reduction in the risk that you face.
No, it's true. We think about compliance as, something you have to do. But at the same time, can you afford it not to do the $25 million cup of coffee from McDonald's? So we've got to worry about that. And I think that whole idea of risk mitigation may not be something that's visible all the time. But the fact that, you had 100%, I think it was like 100% compliance for the better part of 160 or 120 days, that makes all the difference in the world as far as knowing that you've mitigated that risk. That's pretty exciting. I don't think there's any value that wasn't wrung out of you doing this. Kind of want to kind of shift gears, and I want to come back to you, Caitlin, on the ideas. We're kind of looking at efficiency, scalability, automation. What was that like working with NTT Data on that? Like, how did you do it?
That's probably a better question for the people who onboarded them, but I can talk about the process in general and how the solution came into place. But really, it's making sure that all their courses are mapped to the appropriate functions in the system. But what we have to automate the courses, we actually have automation throughout the system, not just related to compliance. And I think we probably have one of the most automatable LMSs out there, where you can turn the levers on, who gets added to a group, what do they do when they complete the course, what do they do if they fail the course, what do they do if they get this score, what do they do if they get that score, as well as the course is good for X number of days, the recertification window opens in this period of time, and then what happens when that recertification period opens? Does the person get enrolled in this course again? Do they get put into a more advanced course? So I think there was a lot of time spent would have been spent mapping for the desired actions to come out of that. And it's just, there's so many options. You can really make sure that every single compliance course in your solution is behaving exactly the way you need it. And Michael, you might remember this, but I actually spent 12 years as an implementation business consultant for another LMS. So I have set up my fair share of compliance solutions. And I can tell you, like, there's a ton of variation, a ton of requirements that need to happen, a ton of automation that has to go in place. And CYPHER's made it so the entire system, not even just the compliance triggers, are very, very flexible and can ensure that everything rolls along as necessary.
There's something I want to add on to that I think is super important. What you're getting at is there's an administrative time recapture on all of this too. And with learning organizations under the pressure of having to do more with less, you offer the opportunity for them to recapture real time within their team that can be put into, more driving of real outcomes and other things that are super important. And I think more so than ever, with the way things are, that huge recapture is super important. It's just another benefit that's attributed to the platform, but isn't exclusively improving the learner experience.
Yes, that's right. A ton of time saving for the admins. And I think also when you can do the triggers that act as a much more seamless experience for the learner. And it allows you to personalize it for the learner. If you get somebody who scores a 90%, do they really need to go to the next module, or can they skip it and go to the one after that? And you have the flexibility to set that up.
All right, Daniel, you ready? I'm going to ask you a question. You get to have my job for a couple minutes. Are you ready? Crystal ball, reading the tea leaves. So where do you think AI learning is heading in the next few years?
That's a great question. Yeah, first of all, I think everybody's excited to see where, learning and development goes, being supported by AI, but I think becoming more predictive and integrated into daily workflows. So as Caitlin was mentioning, not only the time savings, because things can be more automated, but from a learner perspective, having these individual learning paths that are really learner-centric, right? So again, the course, the topics, they're really designed for me based on my interest. I think of something like a Netflix, recommendations for shows, right? Based on your previous shows that you've watched, right? So learning can become a lot more predictive. And I think from that standpoint, we always talk about developing employees and that learning culture. So people really get excited about that and make learning something that is for them. They are much more engaged and they're ready to actually learn what they can so they can continue to support the business and help drive business growth. So I think learning will become a lot more adaptive, real time, just in time, and that'll align with business goals and supporting employee development.
I'm ready to let go, turn the reins over to you, and now you can be an industry analyst. Excellent. It's a great answer, and it's such a truism. And talking about this, you have to react to all of this. You have to address all of this. You have to, every client, every prospect wants you to be ahead of the curve, pulling them along. No one wants to be pulling along their provider. So how are you staying ahead of all of this? How are you addressing all these trends?
Well, we do have, we have a group obviously dedicated just to AI and just getting out in front. We're very lucky that our CEO is exceptionally plugged into all of this. In fact, he heads up most of our AI initiatives. We already have, we'll be announcing it soon, but it is absolutely ready to go. I just did a webinar on it this morning about CYPHER Agent for Learners, which is where the learner gets gets to log in and say, hey, how do I do this? How do I learn how to use Civil 3D to do something? And it generates not just an answer like ChatGPT, it generates actually a matrixed concept map of the topics that they can dig into. So we're already kind of getting to the personalized stuff. We're going to continue to build that out. But we're always kind of watching down the road of where to go, what people want. And there is a balance between what they want, what is useful, and where AI can go, and where it's, we want it to be helpful, make things happen. We want people to be able to adopt it and use it. We don't want to just make AI for the sake of making AI. We want to infuse AI throughout our systems in areas that will actually make it better.
Can I try to tease out a coming attraction just a tiny bit, if you can share?
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about CYPHER Agent?
Yeah. So CYPHER Agent as a concept it's an autonomous AI tool that is, we have them designed for different personas, and the idea is that it is a proactive helping tool that constructively does things. So CYPHER Agent for course creators, which I talked about a little bit earlier, it helps you at every step of the course building process to generate a course. So you can use it entirely and say, here, build me a course soup to nuts. You can build some of the course yourself and then say, I really don't want to write that assessment. AI, do it for me. That's the example I use because I hate writing assessments. Or set up the gamification for this. Again, massive time saver for course administrators. It does so much work. CYPHER Agent for learners, as intended, this is the agent to help out the learners. And in this iteration of it, this is the first launch. It's so it is going to be accessing publicly available data using an LLM. So it's not yet based on proprietary data. It will be. That is on the roadmap for this year. But the example the learner will open up. So what do you want to learn today? It's going to suggest some topics, because remember, this agent being embedded in the LMS knows who you are. It knows what your job is. It knows what the company does. It knows some of the things you've already learned. Give it so it can suggest some topics, you put in your answer, and it's going to generate a response. Again, with that AI cross-check. So everything is also being double-checked for the learner as well. It generates this really beautifully visual concept map that organizes the topics in various clusters, which means that the learner can choose to either go through the whole thing, because maybe they don't know anything and they want to know it all, or maybe they had a really specific answer in mind and they can really pinpoint, zero in on their answer. And access that. They can ask more questions while they're in the system. Tell me more about this. Expand on that. I don't really understand it. And get what they need to know right in the moment. And I see it being as one of those tools to answer your questions right now. One of those things to get more information, maybe on a formal course is being offered. Maybe there is an area where you got stuck, or you need a refresher before you go into the next level. Maybe English isn't, or whatever the language of the course that was taught in isn't your first language, and you want to review the concepts a little bit more in your own language, or at a different reading level. You can use Agent to do that.
Well, that's a great sneak peek. So when do you think we're going to be able to use that?
The CYPHER customers can use it now if they work with us to get it turned on, and new customers will get it too. We'll be announcing it publicly very soon.
Oh, look forward to that. Look forward to that press release. For our audience, we'll be the first ones to let you know when that announcement takes place.
Yes, we will let you know.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
It's very exciting. So, Daniel, last question for you. Anything that you can share on this? Audience always likes to know what's the what's next. So what is the what's next for your learning strategy? What do you think you're going to be focusing on?
Yeah, even just as an organizational goal, it's kind of the year of technology, and AI is at the forefront, right? So we're continuing to build AI-driven learning into our leadership development. And then we're talking about specialized technical training as well for our larger, more corporate users. So, we've got some different workshops related to AI and becoming AI certified and things like that. For us, it's really about being future ready. And the other areas continuing to focus on learner engagement, compliance, efficiency, and just overall learning experience. So I think, again, it took many years for me to help organizations secure the LMS. So we're really going to make sure that we get a return on investment and leverage it really things. So I'm excited to, again, partner with the CYPHER team and really just sky's the limit. So it's going to be an interesting year for us, an exciting journey, and we're just happy to be on board.
Yeah, and you got to keep us informed. Maybe we can do a follow-on to see how those numbers continue to improve over time. Although I don't know where you go after 96%, but there's always a few more digits, right? Or you can invent a new scale of excitement. But thank you so much for, sharing all of this. And we're kind of reflecting on everything that we covered today. Just a couple closing thoughts is, this conversation makes one thing super clear to me. And AI is just no longer a nice to have. It's not a frill. It's not like putting the star on the top of a tree or that blue ribbon or and bow, on a gift box. Like, this is essential to driving efficiency, engagement, and continuous development. And I think, Daniel, your journey and your organization's journey with AI-powered learning, it was a great illustration of how organizations can go beyond simple check the box, compliance-driven training to really using it as a larger strategy for ongoing skill development and growth. And I think powered by the innovations of CYPHER Agent, which is pretty cool, it's really just about getting the future of learning to not be scheduled learning, but get it to be in that moment in time, just for me, just the way I want it. Go back to the New England Patriots one more time. Mr. Brady always says, I throw the ball to the spot, not to the receiver. I kind of like this. It gives us the opportunity to kind of figure out where things need to go and get learning to that place to where learners can learn it when they need to learn it and not be a reactive piece. And that's the moment of need. So let's embrace. We should catch up again. I appreciate your time. And Caitlin, it was a real pleasure. I know it probably went by super fast, but I think it made a real impression on the audience and helped them to clarify like how to just think all of this and candidly make AI learning feel a little bit friendlier, a little bit more controllable, a little bit more understandable. The measurable improvements are there. It's not something that you just hope is going to help. And I think you really went a long ways towards showing how AI is going to shape the future of workforce learning. So thank you.
Thank you.
Again, this is Michael Rochelle, Chief Strategy Officer, Brand Hall Group. Until the next time, I look forward to having future discussions with you. Have a great day.